Welcome to an edition of Legal Empowerment on Ask the Latina. Many times we need to seek legal professional help as Latinas, and we're not sure exactly where to go. But in today's topic, we know that there's a lot of different topics right now that we need to focus on, whether we're Latina students or we're mothers, parents, in many circumstances. Let me introduce to you Garrett Garcia, who's an immigration lawyer. And Garrett, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started becoming a lawyer and all what cases you kind of take.
Oh, well, I've basically been an attorney for about 5 years. I think I started representing kind of Hispanic and Spanish speakers because I'm Garrett Garcia and they would see my name and call. And so just little by little, I started doing that, taking on the cases that affects them in this community. Yeah. And so I would say half of our cases are probably family law, whether it's custody, child support, and divorce. Then we do maybe a quarter immigration, and then we do about a quarter criminal cases, and we do some general civil cases too. Mm-hmm. It's generally, we do basically all the ordinary things that the kind of Hispanic community needs help with.
That's fantastic. And 50% of the U.S. Latinos under the age of 26, they are a very large population right now, and about 35% are younger than 18. So compared to 32% of African Americans and 23% of non-Latino whites. So in the United States, nearly 9 in 10, 89% Latino young adults say that college education is an important factor in the success in their life. So over 3 million students graduate from high school every year. Most get the opportunity to test their dreams and live the American story. However, a group of approximately 65,000 youth do not get this opportunity. They are smeared with the inherited title an illegal immigrant. So these youth have lived in the United States for most of their lives and want nothing more than to be recognized for what they are, Americans. So Garrett, with this particular issue that we have today, a lot of them do want to go to school, and we have DACA. Can you tell us about DACA?
Yeah. DACA is Delayed Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's a program that basically an immigration program to allow some kind of temporary status for people just like who are childhood arrivals. Mm-hmm. People who were, their parents brought them here when they were very small. It's for people who are in the country constantly. Mm-hmm. Since 2007, who were here before they were 16 years old, who are either enrolled in school now, or who are trying to get their GED, or in high school, or doing some sort of college education. And this gives them a temporary permission to work, so they'll have a Social Security number, they can get a regular job, then they can also get driver's licenses, which is a huge problem in most of the states.
Yes.
If you don't have an immigration status, you can't get a driver's license. So that really transforms people's lives to apply for this program and then to get that
And you got to
DACA
get to college. So the slide we had up actually gave you the process as far as how to go in and what are the necessary things that you need to have. It gets a little bit complicated, right? Because you need to have some records of...
The biggest issue is most of the time is getting enough documents to prove that you've been here consistently since 2007 without ever returning back. And so people need to have medical records from their schools. Sometimes they need, lease documents showing that they've lived here, or their bills for different kinds of utilities and cell phones. You need some kind of documents showing constant residency since 2007, and then also to prove that you were here before you turned 16. And that's normally the big hurdle. And once people, talk with their friends and their family and they get those documents, the application process is relatively straightforward.
And now I think it's the age 31, I believe?
Well, there's some... President Obama tried to expand the program to allow people who are older to apply and also get their temporary status for longer. That has been held up in the courts, and so really the program is just how it was originally enacted, and and when the case works its way through the courts and gets resolved, the program will probably be expanded to allow older people to apply. But currently, it's just the original program.
That's kind of crazy because it's really about education, and we really need, if we have this huge population, then they need to have the education, which they want, and want more to have that, be part of the strength for our country. What about universities? Now, some universities have approved the DACA program and do offer. It has a lot to do with the in-state tuition, being able to go for someone who has an immigration status and not have to pay so much. But how many universities are actually involved in this, and what's their delay on all of them getting?
Well, basically, the DACA program was to help people work and get driver's licenses. Now, as far as education goes, when people apply to go to a college, a community college, a university, they need to provide their information. And a lot of the schools are asking for, their immigration status. And if a person doesn't have their immigration status, they're basically categorizing the person as an international student. And so that is extremely expensive, oftentimes over 300% more expensive for an international student than an in-district or in-state resident. Now, once the person gets DACA, most of the schools are starting to treat the person as an in-district person. For example, the University of Michigan treats you as an in-state resident regardless of your citizenship, but if you have DACA. Now, some of the community colleges are doing the same thing, but every school is different, and so it's really important to look into the particular school that you want to go to. Some community colleges treat the person as in-district, some will treat them as in-state, some they'll do all different things. And so it's important to look into that. But the one kind of key thing to remember is, though, even with DACA, the students are still not able to apply for FAFSA, they're still not eligible for state aid grants and things from the federal government, access to those federal funds. And so they still have to, pay their tuition out of pocket. And that's why it's so important to get DACA and get the lowest possible tuition.
Well, if they're like me, I paid through my college, so I didn't use any financial aid, and I know that that's something in this, the Latino population is very big about not using credit cards and wanting to pay cash and everything. So, it's kind of a shame if these universities don't focus on that they're with the population of so many Latino youth, that they're really kind of going to miss out, and these Latinos really start looking at who is really paying attention and giving them that opportunity versus who's not.
Yeah, but it's not just a question about student loans, but it's about scholarships.
No,
because we've had some students locally who have been given full ride scholarships to state universities, and then weeks before they were going to start going to school, they're informed that, no, I'm sorry, because of your immigration status, you're not eligible to receive scholarships that are funded with federal money. And so people are eligible for private scholarships and private things too. So it's not just a question of loans. Scholarships, it makes a difference. But the thing is, it really has opened the door for access to people to get education when it was really just cost prohibitive before.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, another thing, too, that we're going to talk about is that President Clinton, he first signed the Violence Against Women's Act in 1994, and this was with bipartisan support. Among these women, unfortunately, we have counted undocumented women, but do not know that they are accounted for. They can get help, and so undocumented women are not aware that they have the rights to be able to be protected by this law. They aren't likely to report domestic violence incidents out of fear or being deported or what's on their mind. And of course, they're very much, unfortunately, having to live with the enraged partners that they have, and this violence becomes worse for them. In this situation, we have power and control, which is a slide that most Latinas are probably not aware of. In power and control, the abuse is really different kinds. It might not be physical. It can also be emotional abuse. It could be intimidation, coercions, and threats. using the children, maybe stating they're going to deport them, and the kids are going to stay with them because they were born here, and also in different kind of situations. These kind of cases are really, really sad, and unfortunately, I think they happen a lot more with non-immigrant women that are in the fields or have people they work for, particularly men, that take advantage of them, and they don't know that they have rights. What are some of the things that they should do to prepare, or how can they bring forward to get some help?
Yeah, obviously domestic violence is a huge problem in the community. It's a huge problem in society in general, not just amongst Latinas. It's a huge problem in society in general, and a lot of the reality is like people just are ignorant and they don't know necessarily what is domestic violence. Like, sometimes they think like the threshold is so high, the person has to have bruises, there has to be all sorts of terrible things before they realize that this is domestic violence. That's the control and the intimidation, the manipulation, and sometimes there's physical aspects of it too. And so a lot of times people kind of wait until things have been going bad for a long time. And then finally, when they reach out, they may not have documented the instances of what had been going on. They may not have taken any pictures if there were marks and bruises. Sometimes people, punch holes in the walls and kick in doors and do different things like that. And the people just fix it and they don't take any picture, they don't document that. And so it's really important to, take pictures of marks and damage to things. It's important to call the police and make a report because, the county prosecutors all take domestic violence very seriously. They pursue them aggressively, and they're going to take steps. And if a woman participates in a case like that and actively cooperates with them and helps them achieve a conviction, then she can then probably apply for a visa for people who are the victims of domestic violence. And the sad thing is a lot of times people aren't doing that because they have misinformation from friends and relatives and neighbors and such who say, no, you're just going to cause more problems, don't do this, don't do that.
Right. Wow. And there are also cases where they might have been allowed to open up a credit card, and this really helps their situation even worse, because once the situation is taken care of and they're independent on their own, they won't have any way of being able to start up their lives, because we need to have credit. And if they came here and weren't able to establish that and had control over their own income, whether because they might have been working or whatever, that's a difficult situation. And many of them with hurt. I know that there's a lot of centers out there that are available to help out women in situations that might not have been hurt with some health situations and things like that. And it's very important to continue that list. We'll have it on the website, and please, if anyone knows of any center that's not listed there nationwide, please place it on there, because it's so important that Latinas know where to go to for help, especially in the moment where they might be, I think I've heard situations where they might be thrown out of the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and there are places they can go, and they may not know. There's shelters and there's Haven. They can go to. There's support groups for women who have been in this situation, so they can meet monthly and share their experiences and help and support them and send, give them ideas about how to deal with certain things. They could go. There's a lot of them, especially in this area. We have Central Multicultural, we have Hispanic Outreach, we have Haven, and a lot of times the obstacle is finding somebody who speaks Spanish sometimes, but there are agencies who do, and they can connect the people to the needed resources.
That's good. One thing, though, that I wanted to ask you about is, can they open up a PPO, which is protection?
Oh, yes. Yeah, normally speaking, the PPO process is generally, you go to court that same day, you fill out the application, it's reviewed by a judge that same day, and generally from the time you get there to the time you leave is about 4 hours. And normally the judge has looked at the situation and decided whether a personal protection order is necessary. A key thing about this is PPOs are free. You don't have to pay any filing fees to get a PPO. The important thing is the judge is going to basically be looking at what has happened in the last year between these two people. And a lot of times people will have stories, but they won't remember where and when these things took place. And so it's important to have, if there's documentation through police reports, to know the dates and police report numbers. And that's why it's important to report all the instances of any kind of violence or stalking or whatever it is. But really the court is going to focus on what's been happening in the last month or 2 weeks, whether the person has a really fear that something bad is going to happen to them. And then once they get a PPO, they have to serve it on the other person, and then if that person ever comes around them, they can call the police and that person will be arrested. So a PPO is a helpful tool when you have people stalking and coming to the person's house uninvited and causing all kinds of problems besides violence and control and manipulation that may be taking place within a relationship.
That's very interesting. Well, now we're going to go into a topic that's something that's very, you hear a lot in the internet, or you hear this a lot on the TV. It's called ICE. There's a group named ICE that actually goes out there, and they work with Homeland Security, I believe, and they have looking for enforcing, making sure that everything's fine, and looking at the border lines. Can you explain to us a little bit about what ICE stands for, first of all, and then also how does that work, and what is these priorities, and what is it that they're looking for? I know that it seems to have escalated, especially because of 9/11 and what is happening with ISIS, and unfortunately we have terrorists, not necessarily all Latinos, and it seems like Latinos, because we are a larger population, seem to be targeted.
ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They're basically a federal law enforcement agency that's under Homeland Security, and they're in charge of enforcing the immigration laws. So they are active throughout the whole country, but especially in the 100-mile zones around the border. And so basically they're in charge of enforcing all the immigration laws. So sometimes in cooperation with local police authorities, and sometimes totally independently, they will maybe do raids, arrest and detain people. And I think most people are familiar with a person having like an immigration detainer when they're at the jail, and then ICE coming and picking them up. But they also go actively and pick people up based on certain criteria that they have, certain priority levels. There's a memo that came out about a couple of years ago that they basically have 3 categories of people they're looking for. The worst people are, the spies and the terrorists and the people who are in gangs and who've been committed, violent crimes and such. These are the people, their highest priority, and they're supposed to spend the most resources looking for them. And then you have the next lowest. These are people who have 3 misdemeanor convictions. And we're not talking driving without a license misdemeanor conviction. We're talking regular, normal, what everybody thinks is a misdemeanor crime. Or if the person has 1 misdemeanor or conviction, sometimes they're felonies, but of domestic violence, of sexual abuse, of carrying concealed weapons, of trafficking in drugs and such.
And persons.
And persons. And then the third kind of category is basically, the lowest level, but it's the people who were deported after January 1st of 2014 and who don't really fit these other 2 categories. And on that lowest level priority person, the actual immigration official, the ICE people, have the most amount of discretion as to whether they think this person is a threat to public safety and their system of immigration laws.
And I suppose
such.
that's happening immediately at the borderline too, right?
Well, the people caught right at the borderline are the priority 1 people. We're talking people who who are living throughout the whole country.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know. There's definitely a lot of priorities on that one. And one other topic before we go that I want to ask you about is we do have a lot of Latino families here, and there's this program called DAPA.
Yeah.
And with DAPA, what is exactly that stand for? How does the requirements?
DAPA will be a new program like DACA. It's delayed action for parental accountability. This is, like DACA, which is delayed action for childhood arrivals. This is a program to basically protect parents. These are parents whose children are citizens, and it's going to be pretty much like DACA. They're going to have to prove that they've been here a certain period of time, that their children are citizens, that they don't have more than 3 misdemeanor convictions and others. But the reality is, it was supposed to start earlier this year, and we thought we were getting geared up back in May that it would be available, but then it was challenged in the courts, and so currently I think it's at the Court of Appeals, and we'll see whether the Court of Appeals determines this issue or it's going to go to the Supreme Court or what, but it hasn't started yet. We've told people they should start getting their documents ready because you're going to need evidence to prove that you fit the criteria, and sometimes we're talking looking back to maybe 2007 where, this is a number of years and you have to may be hard to find those things.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at. We're pretty certain it's going to start. The question is when. And so.
Yeah, well, I hope that gets resolved because it's hard to see for any families to be separated, and certainly, especially given that the children were born here too. So. And hopefully that works out. Well, I want to thank you, Garrett, for being our guest, and thank you for all this great information. I hope that you can come back and keep us up to date with some of these things that are being updated, as we know, and then any kind of other topics we might have Latinas request, and we might want to bring you back to the show.
Well, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure, and I'd be happy to come back whenever you invite me.
Okay, well, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Well, what we have spoken today was about a lot of legal areas that are very important. I hope you found it very informative. We'll continue to do this. Make sure that you share us on Facebook and Twitter, and also have other Latinas join so they can see the resources and the information that we're providing on the website. A lot of what we talked about we will post on the website as well, and they are both in English and Spanish. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again in another program for Ask the Latina.